مساء الخير أعزائي أعضاء منتدى الثلاثاء الثقافي. أهلا وسهلا بكم في أمسية أخرى من لقاءات منتدى الثلاثاء. Today our presenter is Hassan Al-Saffar, the youngest member of the Tuesday Cultural Forum. Hassan, born in 1997, studied at Fleming College, graduate of 2020 with diploma in computer security and investigation. He is currently working at IBM as an IT security service specialist and part-time as a self-employed personal support worker. He is certified, industry certified in cybersecurity professional, and he have certification from industry companies like Compute IA, Akami, Cisco, and Fortinet. Today, the topic is the وباء الوحدة, or the loneliness epidemic. The floor is yours, Hassan. Please, everyone, put yourself on mute. And Hassan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Safa, for the introduction, and I want to thank everybody for joining the presentation. So let's begin. I want to start this presentation with a preface, quote that I came up with. The true beauty of life is shaped by our thoughts, which guides us to make wise decisions. These decisions help us to fully realize what we are capable of. When we are alone, we discover the beginnings of deep relationships with ourselves and with others. So, a brief introduction into the topics that I will delve into: defining loneliness in the modern world, and the distinction between loneliness and solitude. I will begin with an observation of the changes in society, noting how we have become more isolated, relying on technology for connection, leading to an increase in loneliness. Loneliness, by definition, is a state of emotional distress from a discrepancy between desired and actual social relationships. It's highlighted that loneliness has been escalating globally and poses significant health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Some brief historical context: the root causes of loneliness can be traced back to societal shifts in the 60s and 70s, including urbanization, industrialization, and a move towards individualism. The impact of technology, especially social media, is discussed as a double-edged sword that connects yet isolates the deepening sense of one's loneliness. Loneliness is often called the silent epidemic, defined by shifts in our society towards independence and a digital landscape that fuels isolation. There are difficulties in addressing loneliness since it requires the involvement of others, contrasting against other problems which require you to solve it on your own. Loneliness can only be solved from others. We, as a world, have shifted from collectivism to individualism. As people immigrate to the West, they adopt the ideas of their host country, and the people who immigrate tend to keep within their communities and keep true to their core values, but their descendants, their children, tend to adopt the host country's culture over time, which can lead to isolation in countries that have a culture of individualism. It's important to understand these changes because isolation can lead to not being good to talking to people, and 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 it helps us understanding why people feel more alone. I first want to talk about the economic impacts on socialization. The role of economic status has a huge impact on a person's ability to facilitate social connections. Someone who is struggling financially may have limited opportunities to join in social events because of the cost that's associated with attending these places. Also, as a society, we've commodified social spaces, and in effect, people who are struggling financially tend to become reclusive. Economic factors such as stagnant wages and the rising cost of living exacerbate loneliness in this way. Modern society and technological advancements have contributed to the phenomena of loneliness, not as a disease, but as a symptom of deeper issues. It, it also suggests that there's a profit to be made from people's loneliness, creating a loneliness economy. Highlighted by this are social media companies such as Instagram and TikTok, who perpetuate feelings of inadequacy and isolation due to comparisons from individuals to others. We need to recognize loneliness as a symptom, but not a cause of someone's behavior, a symptom of external factors. The the structure of society and the quality of our connections uh, is not something that can be quickly fixed with technology. We need to look at the impact of social media, um, and we need to seek authentic connections. It also helps to limit exposure to toxic online culture. Also, a society that cares about loneliness should be able to create meaningful physical spaces, such as intentionally intentional city planning and community structures that promote interaction. This includes designing more walkable communities and neighborhood cohesion. To, we also need to be cautious of industries that profit from loneliness, such as dating apps and social media, and promote in-person interactions, and understand the dangers of isolation, its mental, physiological effects. And we need to invest in our communities. But we also need to be critical of new technologies that promise short-term gratification and changes such as augmented reality and virtual reality, because it can cause people to prefer to be alone versus having real connections. Next, I want to talk about the demographic insights. Before, loneliness used to be associated with the elderly, since we typically assign loneliness for people who are widowed, their spouse died, they don't have a family, which is which used to affect only older generations. But now we're seeing a shift in younger people that are feeling more lonely and disconnected, and more importantly, struggling to find meaningful relationships with each other. Men in particular are highlighted as increasingly suffering from loneliness, with a significant drop in the number of close friendships compared to previous decades. I think there was an infographic that showed the number of close friends and the change between different generations. It used to be 5, then 3, then 4, and so on. Alone together, loneliness resounds greatly with young people. As you can see on the left side, I did a quick Google YouTube search. I quickly searched, I have no friends in YouTube. And you can clearly see that there are many videos, and these videos have millions of views. This clearly resonates with young people and is relatable. Um, and is showing that this is a rising trend, and an increasing number of young individuals report feeling friendless, which is gaining attention on social platforms. Viral stories, YouTube videos by these young creators discussing their loneliness do go viral, and it highlights that this is a shared experience within these digital communities. Despite the lack of in-person friendships, these individuals are finding a sense of community and belonging online instead of in the real world. This also highlights the attention that we need and the importance of mental health faced by the younger generation. Not to detract from older generation, mental health should be accessible to all, but it's just alarming that it's affecting young people, which it shouldn't, right? Identification with these experiences is leading for increased calls for social and mental health support systems for the youth. These points aim to highlight the key aspects of the issue while also pointing towards the broader implications for society and mental health initiatives. I also want to talk about how urban design and its relationship to loneliness. I believe personally the concept of car-centric cities and their anti-pedestrian nature causes many psychological and physiological impacts that are not really brought to light. Car-centric cities, like we see in America and in Canada, very much exaggerates and makes it harder for people and less willing for people to meet up. If you have to drive 1 hour, 30 minutes with the chance of being stuck in traffic, this is of course going to affect people's willingness to meet up regularly. Words. English. Noise pollution also, as an example, has a great impact on people's psychology and their behavior. It's not very much talked about, but the more noisy a city is, it causes more people to be less likely to volunteer, less likely to participate in the community, and less likely to talk to strangers on their way of doing their daily routines. And also, because everybody is driving in their cars, you don't have an opportunity to talk to people because, of course, by nature, in a car-centric city, it's very dangerous for pedestrians. It's very common for people to be hit by oncoming traffic, careless driving, and also these places cause immense sprawl, which pushes people away, literally. I also want to talk about the destruction of the third place due to this car-centric design commonly seen in North America and some parts of the world. So you're probably wondering, what is the third place? The third place, because if you're probably wondering, if there's a third place, what is the first and second place? So the first place is your home. Second place is your work. These are the two places you spend the most time. The third place is a place out of these spaces where you would spend when you're not at home or you're not at work. Because of this car-centric urban design, we have destroyed or very severely limited spontaneous participation in these social places. So an example of a third place would be a park in a walkable neighborhood, a plaza, like in Europe, if you traveled there. It could also be a coffee shop on your way from home to work. These are places where normally people would meet and participate in communal activities. We as a society need to rethink about how we can enter third places better into our culture and look at our culture and examine what do we value? Do we value having nice cars and individualism, or do we value a place where people can get together and commune without going out of their way, with investing a significant cost of time or money to get to these places? Ideally, a third place would be that you pass by from your first and second place daily. And it's a place in countries that do have where friends often meet up after work or on the weekend and engage in social activity. I personally have traveled to Italy and Europe, but I've also heard one great city, and that's a great example of third spaces, is Barcelona, Spain. I don't know if anybody's ever traveled to Barcelona, Spain, but it has a high walkability, which means that if it's more pedestrian, the city design is more centered around people rather than cars. This allows for people to meet naturally without planning in these third spaces, which naturally encourages more social. This leads to my second point, my other point, my next point, I should say. Planned versus spontaneous social gatherings. Often in our society, especially in Canada and America and other places much like the two, social gatherings have to be planned. They have to be coordinated. There's no spontaneity. This means that if people want to meet, again, they have to take time out of their day, they have to invest money, and they have to plan these things and coordinate. Versus if we lived in a city or a community, if we think about in a smaller scale, which has a plaza or a natural meeting place or like a park that people go through but on their way to work or home, it would give more of a chance for people to actually meet, coordinate, and interact without any prior planning. Because from my own experience and probably your own, for you to meet up with a friend, you have to plan logistics, you have to think about it very deeply, and there's not everybody has time for that, especially since people are so busy with their own lives. So we as a society also need to look at how we organize social events and rethink, is this the right way of doing it? Is there another way? How can we encourage natural socialization? So I want to go into a little bit of a case study about places where there are extreme forms of social withdrawal. Japan, for instance, if you may not have known, has many issues with mental health, with a high suicide rate and extreme social isolation, especially amongst the younger generation. It's very alarming. And because of this, these places like Japan and Korea are seeing a sharp decline in their population because less people are valuing time with their friends. They're not valuing time with the community or forming even basic romantic relationships. Loneliness is a global issue with varying degrees of prevalence across different countries and cultures, which is exacerbated by various economic conditions and societal norms. So, what is hikikomori? Hikikomori is a Japanese word, a Japanese term to describe a person who withdraws from society and lives in complete isolation for an extended period of time. It could range from a few years to their entire lives, often staying in their homes for months or years at a time. With, and whenever they do leave, it's only to get food or fulfill their basic needs. It's staggering, it's alarming because it primarily affects young people, as I've said, with over 1 million people living as hikikomori in Japan. But also, this phenomenon is spreading globally. There are many multiple factors that contribute to this, including societal pressure for success, rigid social norms, familial relationships, and mental health issues like depression and anxiety. There's also an economic impact. The issue has significant implications economically. Because of less young people, there are less people working, less people innovating, which and more people are getting older and there are less people being born. So the younger generation, increasingly over time, is going to have very hard time going forward as the few have to support the many. And current family and social welfare systems are under risk of collapsing if this trend continues. The social stigma faced by these types of people and extreme social isolation can make it even worse as it deters them from seeking help due to the shame of, of being alone. Because of this, the Japanese government has initiated measures to address the phenomenon, including social programs and mental health support services. But so far, no country, not including only Japan, has been able to address this decline in population. It's also unique to Japanese culture, which values conformity and group harmony, which makes the sense of failure amongst these people even worse. And and since they don't fit in, they don't even have the drive or the motivation to go out and change it. And of course, this has all been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic with the increase in remote work, which is also eliminating the second place, as I talked about, as an opportunity to meet people. So I want to talk about how people do become lonely. Um, some people have experienced this personally, but social circles are not actually a circle. It's more like a web. On average, people tend to know 2 to 3 people that they know well, and most people they know one person, which is the minority, who has many friends. So you'll see in this picture, the one person will be connected to everybody, but the people with less connections will be connected to them. So what can happen is sometimes if you have a falling out with people who are very well socially connected, it severely limits your opportunity to meet others because usually you would meet them through friends and their friends and so on. So what this does, it distorts people's perception and makes them feel even more lonely because what they see is they see everybody has more friends than them, but they don't see the other people who don't have friends because, of course, they're socially isolated. So it gives a false perspective that everybody has more friends than you, when in reality, the average person only has 2 to 3 close friends. But most people, they know somebody who has lots of friends. But we have to remember, this is the minority. This makes it challenging to form and maintain connections in modern society. Loneliness can also be challenging for people who are neurodiverse, which basically is a long, complicated word for somebody who thinks and acts differently from normal people. So, for example, people with Down syndrome, people with autism, these are called neurodiverse people. These people have always faced uh, unique barriers to socializing and have trouble integrating into normal communities. So, as a society, we also need to think not only just about elderly people who are alone, but also we need to think about other people who have mental challenges and disabilities that limit their ability to to develop their own social circles. Because a common misconception, and I know it very well, is that people will see somebody with autism, and usually autistic people have interests. They share interests that a child would have, but these people have the same thoughts as you and me. They're just not able to speak about it or express it well. They want to form relationships, they want to marry and also have kids, right? But it's just because of their challenges and barriers, it gives us the misconception that they're different from us. But in reality, we're more alike than we are different. So, as a society, I believe we need to think about strategies and support systems that foster inclusion, not just for young people, but for everyone. Loneliness has also had a big impact on dating, and online dating has become more popular over the years. And unfortunately, there has been a big impact on people's ability to find significant others, partners, wives, girlfriends, etc. Um, this is mainly due to the commercialization of dating platforms. People nowadays have become so dissatisfied with online dating because of the profit incentives of these companies. It's kind of like a paradox because if the online dating apps actually worked and matched you with somebody fast, then they wouldn't make any money. So what happens is these platforms are incentivized to keep you on the dating apps as long as possible and to hide all of the features and people that you are interested and features that would help you find someone behind paywalls and other obstacles. So this naturally has led to a lot of frustration, especially with my generation, and also across all generations. But because of the loneliness and people's inability to connect through the previous things I've mentioned, um, what we're seeing is a return to traditional methods of finding connections uh, amidst the digital dissatisfaction. So we're seeing a resurgence in people going to singles events, paying for matchmakers, which is funny because we always think that technology is meant to help improve things, make things faster, better, more efficient. But in this case, it's made it worse. Trust me, I know. Online dating is just very bad. And I'm actually happy that people are returning to the traditional ways of finding connections. So there is a bit of a modern dilemma when it comes to friendships, not just relationships, but just connections in general. People are often stuck between a choice between focusing on their career or focusing on their friends. And because people are so preoccupied with their daily lives, and especially like depending on the individual situation, like people, they tend to get busy with work, school, and other obligations. Friendships, unfortunately, are one of the first things that get uh, dropped. Um, so overall, we're seeing a trade-off between professional and professional ambitions and personal relationships. And then we're seeing a shift between towards fewer closer friendships. And this could have big implications for the future, as I've mentioned previously. And these have contributed to trends that are showing a decline in birth rates and an increase in society and the average age of a society, which further makes the problem worse. So it's kind of a negative feedback loop. It's just a snowball getting bigger and bigger down the hill, and there's no stopping it unless we as a society look at ourselves and think outside the box and change how we are doing things. I think we need to change what we value. We need to change how we place the importance of connections with others in our lives. And we also need to make a collective effort because we all deserve it and we all need to feel loved. We all feel the need to belong to a group. And it can have drastic consequences on all facets, all levels. So how do we go forward and what are some solutions and actions we can take? So we can take individual levels or personal things we can do as an individual. We can do a various strategies to fight loneliness. As a community, we can implement new policies that foster social connections. And we also need to look at the role of urban planning in creating more inclusive and socially friendly cities. So some solutions and actions. This is not a one type of fix solution. We need to implement multiple things in together to fix this, which includes on the personal, societal, and global level. There are a few recommendations, including seeking professional help when you do feel lonely. It's also important to have acceptance for who you are and practicing gratitude. Reducing social media usage is one of the immediate things you can do to help reduce the feeling of loneliness. Also, volunteering in your community is a great way to develop connections within your community and also uh, helps foster genuine connections. On a societal level, there are initiatives taken by certain governments, such as in the United Kingdom, they've appointed a minister for loneliness, whose job is to promote community engagement and redesign urban spaces to encourage social interaction, which is in the discussion right now, since this is fairly new and just recently gained traction. We need to acknowledge the social shift. We need to see societies push towards independence and self-sufficiency as an we need to recognize that this has an unintended consequence. This includes decreased social skills and which encourages isolation. This is useful because it can help us recognize the root cause. We need to have a better understanding of loneliness and understand that it's not just a personal issue, but a society issue. And solutions will involve the action of multiple people rather than just one person. And we need to fight intolerance, and we need to recognize that the internet can create echo chambers and intolerance by making people stay in their bubble and not talk to people from other groups, cultures, and others who have different ideas. We need to be more tolerant. We need to be more active and engage in social solutions. Instead of focusing on your own loneliness, it's often the best solution is to reach out and help other people's loneliness. Because if you're feeling lonely, chances are someone else is feeling lonely too. So if just by sending a text or reaching out to a friend that you haven't spoken to a while is a great way to approach this, and often they will appreciate it. Being compassionate and reaching out, engaging in social activities, and reflecting on yourself. Introspection, which is the name for it, thinking about your own thoughts, thinking about thinking, thinking about your role and your relationship to the community and how you can change things is very important. I would encourage to take small steps that are practical and that build genuine connections. So, in conclusion, we need to recognize loneliness as a public health issue, to foster community connections. It's also good to limit social media, cultivate personal well-being, looking after yourself in many forms, like getting a nice haircut, getting extra cheese on that slice of pizza. It's very important to yourself as someone that you respect and love. Also, it's important to seek and offer support to others. Never be afraid to seek professional help if you are having these feelings. Also, be open to reaching out to others who you think might be experiencing loneliness. One thing that I do personally somewhere, and I don't know many people, is I look around, I see who else is just sitting or standing by themselves, and I go and talk to them. Because honestly, that's just a great way to meet someone, offer support and compassion. Because sometimes it's important to realize that not many people take the initiative for these things, and that's okay. Don't I It's very important never to take it personally. So I'm done with my presentation. I want to extend the discussion to you guys for questions and answers and open the floor. And thank you. I definitely encourage everybody to have a dialogue and explore new ideas and, connect.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Hassan. Well done and very good topic. Honestly, it's an eye-opener to an issue we all experience in the modern life. Now we will open the discussion for everyone.